really at any organization or museum, you usually have a handful of key individuals. All the airplanes that come in, I mean, they take these airplanes that have, some of them that haven't flown in 40 years, 50 years, and they restore them. So unbelievably unique, and they're being restored to fly. And again, they do it, for nothing more than to share these with the public. And that's a huge part. And that's one of the reasons I get to do it. So, and I'm happy just, again, to be a small part of all these organizations that I get to come in and go fly and hang out with people that keep them going. Hi, I'm Ray Fowler, and I fly for the airlines and the Air National Guard. But on the weekends, when we're not during the COVID, I get a chance to go fly several World War II airplanes, and most recently get to fly in the Salute to America flyby over our nation's capital. I received a phone call from Jim Hagedorn with Scott's Miracle Grow. Jim himself is a warbird pilot, known as the Old Crow, and he received a phone call about the opportunity to put together the airplanes that we would fly over the White House. So I think it had to do with funding. Jim previously flew F-16s, and I think he was excited about the opportunity just to be able to put it all together. So I got this phone call literally about 3 weeks before the event. So it all had to come together very quickly. Jim started making phone calls to people he knew and trying to line up whether first we could even line up the airplanes to make it happen. But secondly, if he put the funding together, how it would all come together. And so it was exciting since we're not doing any flying. I mean, almost every event is canceled right now. So just the potential to go fly an airplane these days is pretty exciting. And personally, I didn't think it would all come together because there were so many moving parts. But once the right people got involved and started doing what they do, it all came together, and it couldn't have worked any better. All the moving parts that go together to make this happen, it's unbelievable. Not just all the mechanicals, the weather, the availability of aircraft, the owner participation, everybody that can make this happen is, to me personally, I thought it was not going to happen, but I was excited to the potential just because it came together so quickly, and everything really had to work. So from my standpoint, we started kind of doing the math on how many people could participate, how many airplanes could show up. And by the time we did, we kind of put them all together. On paper, I was kind of the one left out without an airplane, which was so I was still excited it was going to happen. But personally, I didn't think I was going to get to participate just because we were short of an airplane. Jim flies his own P-51 Old Crow. for both Jack Roush's airplanes. Connie Bolden was flying one, and Paul Draper was flying the other one. And so we started looking around to where we could kind of find another airplane, which led us to call Ron and Diane Fagan up in Granite Falls, Minnesota. Unbelievable folks. And I think it was one phone call to Ron and said, "Hey, can we come steal a P-51?" Not only did Ron say, "Absolutely, we would love to participate with this," but as we found out, his airplane was not in annual because they're not flying anything. So they had to bring in a bunch of people to get their airplane flying and get it in annual. It was not compliant with the new ADS-B compliance to fly over in the airspace that's around the restricted airspace around Washington, D.C. So they really went above and beyond. I think everybody went above and beyond. Not to mention, just to go get all the airplanes when it got closer time for the event, they were scattered all over the country. So, I ended up flying into Minnesota. They picked me up in a private airplane and flew me to Granite Falls so I could fly to Columbus, where we met all the airplanes together to fly over. So, everything, just one front of bad weather could have messed this whole event up. And the weather was perfect going and coming. The weather was perfect for the event itself, and also hats off to the Air Force, because we look at our small little part of this, which was effectively 20 or so airplanes of World War II airplanes and Korean vintage warbirds to fly over in the event. Our military had every airplane flying over the event. So of all of those units to come together and to participate, and it just was it couldn't have worked any better. And what a great way to spend the 4th of July, flying over, especially, given our current climate, for really not a whole lot of things that we can do and people can enjoy while everyone's sitting home waiting for the whole COVID to get done with. So it was a great event.
Ladies and gentlemen, from right here, the Fagan Fighters World War II Museum.
Yeah, Ron and Diane Fagan have an unbelievable collection of airplanes. So any chance I have just to go up and see it is exciting, whether or not I get to fly an airplane or not. So, and to see what they have new, because they always have something new behind the curtain that they get to open up and show me a new airplane up there. So I'm like a big kid whenever I go into up to Granite Falls to their museum. But again, most of those airplanes are just because they're not flying air shows, and this is the time they would be preparing airplanes to go to Oshkosh, which is canceled, which we all want to be at. Again, they had all those airplanes just sitting, really not flying very much. So to bring in the people and to spend the effort and money to get the P-51 up and flying in a relatively short period of time was just amazing. But for anybody that gets an opportunity to stop by that museum, it is absolutely amazing. And it was great to go through and to be part of their museum and to fly their airplane. Of course, they have two P-51s, and it was just great because it gave me a ride for the flyover, and I got to see Ron and Diane and spend a little time with them. They're unbelievable people. If you look at why most people do what they do, particularly for the preservation of warbirds, the preservation of our military history, the warbird world is a relatively small group of people that are unbelievably patriotic. I think they're very selfless. They do what they do, not for anything other than to show what what has been done, and really to preserve that for future generations. A lot of the regular public may not even have any idea, what these airplanes did for our, for our freedoms. So people like me, even though I'm very fortunate, I get to fly a lot of neat airplanes, but I started as a young kid, just on the other side of the fence watching these airplanes fly, never thinking I'd have an opportunity to fly them. So, there's so many organizations that let you get involved, and you get involved with, you don't get to jump in the seat and go fly right away, but there's so many things to do in these museums to help and to volunteer. And again, when you get around these groups of people, it's unbelievably patriotic as far as what they want to do for the country. And that's why I think that's why there was such a push for this to come together from the Fagans, from Jim Hagedorn, from Connie Boland, from all the people that really stopped everything in their lives to make this happen. And they had to, because it came together in such a short amount of time. For me personally, I got to just show up and look good, and because all the planning behind the scene was mostly done by the time I got there, which was great. But it is an amazing opportunity. Who knows how long these airplanes will fly? Hopefully, my kids and grandkids and beyond will still be flying these airplanes. But unfortunately, it takes a lot of money, one thing, to keep them flying, and a lot of just a lot of time and effort to restore these airplanes, keep them flying. So I'm happy to be a small part of it. I have like hundreds of those stories of literally, and I can go all the way back to my first trip to Oshkosh, Wisconsin, when they had the lines of P-51 sitting there, and I think I was 16 or 17. I think I might have just got my private pilot's license, so the writing was still wet on my license, I believe, as a private pilot. And of all the P-51s there, Tony Beatsler, which just recently passed away, owned a P-51 for 35 years, said, "Hey, climb up and get in the seat." And he put me in the seat of that airplane, and he, showed me where the gear was and the switches and how you started it and all. And he didn't have to do any of that. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of people wanting to do that. And as you find out when you have these airplanes, if you let one person in the cockpit, you will blink, and there will be 100 people standing in line trying to get on these showpiece airplanes. So one thing that I've always done because of Tony is I've always tried to do the same. So no matter what, when the kids are there, it's a lot of times they're not my airplane and they're beautiful and I can't put them in it. But when I can, I've always tried to give back and hopefully start that spark that started in me to fly the airplanes. But everywhere you go, all these people, these museums, like you're saying, they're all there for the public. They're there for the public to come out and learn about the airplanes and to get involved. So a lot of people don't know that, it's not just paying a ticket and coming and paying for, making a small donation to look through the airplanes. We need young people involved to stay involved, in every aspect to keep these museums flying and keep these airplanes moving around the country. So it's every opportunity we can get to get somebody to do that is something that we all need to do. And I think everybody that I know does everything they can to get people involved.
The Tuskegee Airmen had to battle a lot of different things in order to be fighter pilots, not just learning how to fly and learning how to employ a fighter aircraft in combat, but they also had to overcome all the racial tension and stereotypes that exist in America. But at the end of the day, the most important thing was what kind of pilot were they, what kind of excellence did they have, how did they fly the mission, how did they fight, and that's what truly determined the success for those 996 airmen who graduated the Tuskegee Experiment. And the exact same thing holds true today with everything that they do is going to be heavily scrutinized, and at the end of the day, as long as they meet or exceed the standard of the 100th Fighter Squadron, then they will continue to be successful here and they will continue to do well. And I have every confidence in both of those young men that they will do just that.
So I've been fortunate. I fly for the 187th Fighter Wing in Montgomery, Alabama. So a little more than 20 years. It's very fortunate to still be in the F-16 after all these years flying for the Air National Guard. However, we picked up the lineage for the 100th Fighter Squadron. So we are the Red Tails, and we're in the process within the next couple of years converting to the F-35. I don't know if I'll get to see it. I'm kind of on the fence whether I'll go fly the F-35 or not, but we picked up the lineage of the Red Tails, which is unbelievable. In our unit, and our wing commander started the Red Tail Foundation. So we have a great program to put people into aviation, particularly underprivileged youth into aviation through the Red Tail Scholarship. And again, a lot of these young kids have no idea that they can be, there's so many jobs in aviation. They had no idea that they too can go fly military aviation. They can fly corporate aviation, fly airlines. All they just need is a little nudge and a little bit of money to get them through pilot training, and that's what we do with the Red Tail Foundation. So, we hope people also get involved, not just as personally, but also with donations to some of these foundations, because they all survive off of donations. And so, if you're interested in that, please look out Red Tail Foundation and make a donation to help continue that program. My personal foundation that's nearest and dearest to my heart is the Liberty Foundation, based out of Douglas, Georgia. So I've been involved with them since 2004. Don Brooks, the founder, his father was a tail gunner in a B-17. So way back in 2002 or 2003, I get a phone call about test flying a new B-17, which was exciting. And that airplane flew in 2004. I got to put the first flights on it in December 2004. Which became the Liberty Bell. So we flew that airplane all over the country up until the time it was badly damaged in an in-flight fire, actually, and landed in the field. Badly damaged, but not destroyed, and has actually been rebuilt down in Douglas, Georgia. So it's about a $4 million restoration. So we basically take, usually it's very small donations, but we have a lot of people that have been involved and been with the airplane. So just even the small donations, they add up. On occasion, we get a lot bigger donations, but that's how we're rebuilding that airplane to get it fly again. But Don Brooks is an unbelievable guy, and not just was his father involved with aviation, but Don was the one that went and brought the P-38 out of the ice in the Greenland expedition. So Don actually invented the first version of the Gopher that tunneled 275 feet down in the ice, and he was actually there to get the B-17s out, hopefully to get enough parts and pieces to come up with a flying B-17 out of that project. They were lucky just to get the P-38 out, and it flies today. But so that's why I do what I do. I take time off from work, from my schedule with the airlines and schedule with the military, to go and be involved with the Liberty Foundation. And right now, all the touring is suspended, obviously, during the COVID. But once that comes up, he goes away. Hopefully, we'll come to a city and people can come out and be involved, and hopefully get involved with the Liberty Foundation as well. We need the volunteers to keep that program going. And right now, finances are not very good because it's so hard to raise money during the current climate. But hopefully that museum will survive for many, many years to come. The airplane is sitting in Titusville, Florida, right now down at the museum on display and not flying, just like everything else during the COVID. But yeah, no, I actually got a couple of phone calls from people well before the airplane was finished flying and say, "Hey, I heard you're test flying the XB-82," and I'm like, "Well, that's news to me because I haven't heard anything." I've obviously known Tom Riley all the way back from when he was restoring the Liberty Bell, so he finished did the restoration on Liberty Bell, and always known Tom and respected him, but I also heard a half a dozen people that were going to test fly the airplane. So it was nice just to be considered for the list. And when it came time to fly, I got a phone call from Tom, and I think the running joke was everybody else actually declined or said no to fly it. Pretty ambitious project, but that program, as ambitious of a rebuild and the uniqueness of the airplane, and really not having anyone, current or qualified in it to get a lot of information about how it was going to fly, that went incredibly well. So we did all the test flights with very few issues on the airplane, and the issues that we had were really issues they would have had when the original XP-82 flew, because it is the production, the test aircraft before they ended up with a production airplane. So I got to learn a lot about the F-82 and what it's done for our country, which is still pretty amazing. Airplane that it survived after World War II and ended up flying in Korea and ended up actually getting the first 3 kills of the Korean conflict. But it's a neat airplane, to say the least, and it's kind of a privilege to be, currently the person that gets to go fly around it until it goes to a new home. And I'm sure there's a lot of people lined up behind me that like to fly the airplane. It was great. And to show it at Oshkosh last year was, probably it'll only go downhill from there. So I got to fly a bunch of different airplanes, including the twin Mustang at Oshkosh. So that was a great privilege, and it looks great. It flies equally as good, and neat to be a part of that. I got to go, Bud Anderson is one of my favorite people in the world. As everybody that meets him, he's just such an unbelievable gentleman. So I got to ride in a golf cart through the Pima Air Museum of all the airplanes sitting out of Pima, and he's sitting there pointing at every airplane. I flew that, and I flew that. I think he flew everything. So big airplanes, small airplanes, but he certainly flew the XP-82. And it is funny because he, the next thing out of his mouth was the worst airplane he ever flew. And I think, in the defense of the XP-82, I think Bud was comparing it to a fighter, because a fighter is very nimble, and Bud is very much, even today, he's a steely-eyed fighter pilot to this day. So if you compare it to a fighter, it's kind of cumbersome and it's heavy, and particularly the XP-82, which he flew, the same airplane that I fly, there's no hydraulics on it. So you're basically manhandling around a 20,000-pound airplane, and I'm sure Bud was equally not impressed with his maneuverability as I have not been impressed with his maneuverability. There's actually a second airplane being built that is a production F-82, and it'll have the hydraulics. So it's probably a lot more nimble, but it probably still is not a P-51, because when you hook 2 of them together, it makes it fly probably a little more like a truck than a fighter. But yeah, Bud was wonderful. But everybody I talked to also about the airplane, what's amazing about it is I can see where they made it unbelievably safe for the pilots that flew it. Even though you're flying a warbird, it stalls like a Cessna, and it's fast, and it is it's a different kind of airplane that you would expect from a fighter aircraft. And that plane still holds the record. In my understanding, it still holds the record for the longest unrefueled fighter mission, where it flew from Hawaii all the way to New York in 14 hours and 32 minutes. So and that airplane's sitting in the Wright Pat Museum. So that's a long time sitting in an airplane unrefueled, and that's why it ended up surviving as long as it did for military planners. Well before this, and this was really a big portion of the thing that could have stopped everything in the tracks, is our government had to vet every pilot and every person that was involved, even the people that were out on the ramp there. So they take that very seriously. That airspace that's around Washington, D.C., it is the most restricted airspace in this country. So as an example, if you just barely clip it when you take off and you're flying a commercial airliner out of Reagan National, you end up getting a lot of time off work. They take it very seriously. So the Secret Service had to vet everybody. I'm sure people like myself was a little easier just because I have an active military ID, but for every pilot, they went through and vetted them. They came out and looked over the airplanes. They brought bomb sniffing dogs. So they did their due diligence to make sure that everything was and all the people were qualified to fly on it. And once they were done, they gave us the armbands, and nobody got around the airplane. So it was it was exactly what you would expect for an event like this. It was very high profile, and it's a big deal to let a bunch of vintage airplanes and civilian pilots fly right over while the president's standing on the lawn right below us. So they were very restricted in what where we flew and our routes, and we had to fly very precise on these routes. And in that regard, I think everybody did an amazing job. And when we got back, we looked at it and just to see, kind of afterwards when we debrief, what could we have done better? There's certainly always stuff you can do better, but I think as far as making the military happy with us, they were pleased with the flyover, and we were just happy it worked as well as it did. It was an unbelievable event. I was the flight lead for the fighters, yes, for the Atlantic fighters, and as it turned out, my work ended up being really easy since ultimately once we went through the brief, the B-17 ended up being the pathfinder and kind of the keeper of the timing. So I get to take credit for, but I really didn't have to do any hard work. We got to join the B-17, and the Yankee Air Force was flying Yankee Lady, and they did a great job. And right on, we were, right on the course and right on time over target. So they did a good work. They did good work, made us look good. So what was unique about this one, just like most flyovers, you typically go to a position and hold the weight, and you either have a hard time or you have a soft time, which is a hard time's a little easier because no matter what, you're going to square up and you're going to try to make that timing. But when you have like a national anthem flyover, you have somebody speaking beforehand, like when we do the race flyovers, usually things move a little bit because they get a little behind, and then they end up, so they have to tell you these times. And that's what happened in this case. They end up slipping our time. So we take off way early and we have plenty of gas. So we just fly around in circles, waiting. And then they came to us with what they call a Rolex. And that's a military term that they're going to Rolex the time. And we got a 10-minute slip. So you just take everything and slip 10 minutes. So we fly around in circles for another 10 minutes. You write down, you recompute your times on your card. What's unique about this is we're flying around in circles, and it's evening time, which is great. So this is later in the evening, and it's still a little warm, but it was a beautiful day to fly. And you're sitting there flying on a B-17, and you got I have 3 more P-51s flying with me, which is beautiful. And then every time you look up, you see a B-2, a B-1, you see F-35s, F-22s. They had airplanes stacked up to the moon for their portion of the flyover. So that's very unique compared to most of our flyovers where you just make your one pass and you're done. Since they were going to just every 4 minutes they had different airplanes coming through. So that was really unique for us. But once you start and you have your time, we just would square it up and fortunately today you've got so much in the way of GPS and avionics to kind of hit that time. And once we squared it up, I looked at it. We were within 7 or 8 seconds of that time, which was great. And now you just try to look nice for when you fly over, and that's all all we had to do. So I'm flying looking at the B-17, but also looking down at the Pentagon and looking. I can obviously see the Washington Monument and can see the White House and see that we're right on that line that they had drawn for us to fly over. And again, the B-17 guys did a great job, put us right where we're supposed to be. Under no circumstances were we allowed to fly over the White House. So the direction of the flyover was very specific, and they did a great job because they knew that they also have airplanes off both wings, and those airplanes, they can't position it to where one of those airplanes end up flying over the White House. And they were right on the line, which was great. so in my flight, I mean, I did have the A-team of flyers there, which was great. All great, accomplished aviators. So Jim Hagedorn was my number 2 in the Old Crow, and again, the guy that made it all happen for everybody. And then on my right wing, I had Wes Stowers, and he was flying Ain't Misbehaving, and previous military guy and probably one of the top guys. And he was great as the deputy lead too, because I knew if my airplane didn't start, he was the one that could pick it up and do probably far better than I could do. And then Connie Bolin, and Connie Bolin, she was the primary organizer for the whole thing. So she was the one that got the call from Jim that says, "Hey, make all this happen." So Jim wrote the check, and Connie had to put all the people together. But she also got to fly in the event, and she, she's been flying Mustangs for forever, and a whole bunch of other airplanes. She gets to fly airplanes I don't fly, Tiger Cats and fun airplanes around. So just like no matter what you're flying, you're always envious about what somebody else is flying. So, so we had the A-team flying in our group, and they did a great job. We brought over Paul Draper, and he was flying Jack Roush's other airplane, the B model Old Crow. And just since 5 airplanes didn't fit, he ended up getting pushed over to fly with the Korean War airplane. So we, Paul would have been with our group, but he ended up getting pushed over as well. So again, it was just the perfect flight. And then when we all landed, we're like, man, that went well. My kind of criticism of myself is after the flyby, we were all basically breaking up as a flight. So the B-17 is doing this, and we're just going to trail and follow the B-17. I didn't really, none of us anticipated that the camera would stay on us as long as it did. So we kind of were, at that point, we're all done with the flyby, but I guess America and everybody else is still looking at us through the camera lens. So, had I had to do over again on that, I would say, hey, let's just stay on the wing of the airplane and stay pretty for a lot longer. But our briefing was to fall back and trail at that point, because we were done, and we figured they're not looking at us anymore. But that's, I guess, more criticism on myself than anything. It went very smoothly, and great time. Well, in this case, this would not have happened if it was not for Jim Hagedorn with Scott's and Fred Smith with FedEx. I mean, it was a sizable donation. These airplanes cost, thousands of dollars an hour to operate. Every bit of that did not, not a penny came out of our tax dollars to make this flyover happen. So it would not have happened otherwise. And I don't know exactly, but I think even all the fireworks that came off was donated by somebody that had the beautiful fireworks display. So there, politics aside, from everything that's going on, these people do this because this country's given them so much, and this is just and this is their way of giving it back, and that's what they did, to try to give a little bit back. And again, I don't know Fred Smith, but I've been around Jim Hagedorn forever. He's an amazing patriot, and he served his country as an F-16 pilot. He does so much, and he provides so many jobs, and he's a neat guy to be around. Not to mention when I get to go fly with him, because when he gets to take off the CEO hat, he gets to put back on the fighter pilot hat and go fly a P-51 and do this. So, I'm sure, just for him to be, kind of back in the squadron, so to speak, and to get to go fly a fighter and fly on the wing and be a part of this, it's a big deal for him. So, for all these people to do something like this, that really Jim and all these guys, they didn't ask for anything of it. They're not wanting their companies don't get any benefit. They're not asking to be promoted. They're just doing it because they want to do it for love of country, and then they really don't ask for anything back. So I look at that, and think about what we can do on the smallest scale. Obviously, I can't write hundreds of thousands of dollars to go make airplanes fly. So everybody really wants to do their part, and hats off to Jim and for the other people that made this event happen, because it was amazing. And how many times are you going to be able to look up or look on TV and see these airplanes fly? I mean, there is a limited period, and every year these airplanes get parked and put in museums because they're so expensive to operate. So I think in certainly my lifetime. And I've seen airplanes that I've flown over the years now that are parked forever, that'll never get air under them again. So I'm just hoping keep letting us fly airplanes. That's the only way it's going to continue to happen. My takeaway was how smoothly everything went. Not just the flyover, because that, you're always happy when that goes well. But usually when you do these events, people are fighting mechanical issues. You're fighting the weather. You're fighting everything just aligned for this to work out. Not to mention, we started moving airplanes home. Jim Hagedorn sent corporate airplanes to pick us up when we dropped off. So they chased me up to Granite Falls, which is not easy to get to. They in a corporate jet and to fly us home, things like that. So they didn't have to do any of that stuff, and they did. They chose to, just to make it a lot smoother and a lot easier for all of us. So that's my takeaway. And again, if I never got to fly another airplane again, I've done so much and been so blessed to do so much out of other people allow me to do these things. So this is just another one of those things. You just say, wow. And this is my wow of 2020, because let's face it, there's probably not going to be very many this year, and because there's not going to be many events, and we get excited over just the smallest stuff now, to go out and just go fly. In fact, I was just flying a Cessna the other day, and I'm like, man, this is pretty cool. So just to go out and fly anything right now is a big deal. So this will certainly be the probably our biggest event of 2020, and for all the other pilots, people that participated, I know that they'll probably say this is one to put in the back and talk about for years. So hopefully we get to do it again. And I know people love to come out to the nation's capital to look up and see these airplanes fly. So hopefully we'll get to do it again sometime in the future.
World War II changed the world forever, and forever after. The Fagan Fighters World War II Museum of Granite Falls, Minnesota was created as a tribute to the men and women of the greatest generation, whose incredible sacrifices during World War II won and preserved the freedoms we enjoy today. The Fagan Fighters World War II Museum is the dream, the creation, and the passion of the Fagan family of Granite Falls, Minnesota, Ron and Diane Fagan and their sons Aaron and Evan.
We've taken on a mission to connect the latest generation with the greatest generation, because these are events in our history that need to be remembered, and in our case, and in the case of young children, they need to be introduced to. And we feel they're very important and need to be preserved, and that's what we're trying to do.
The mission is to preserve the memory of the heroes of World War II, promote patriotism in today's Americans, and inspire tomorrow's leaders to study and apply history's lessons. It's not enough that these beautiful airplanes are collected and restored. The Fagan Museum restores each of them to flying condition.
I think with everything at the museum, having stuff operational is important because people get to see them, how they were used, and get to hear them start up, and it gives people a better perspective of what these machines were capable of and what they look like in the air.
There are no markers, monuments, or visitor centers in the skies above Europe, the Pacific, or the China, Burma, India theaters of World War II. These airplanes are the monuments. They are timeless portals to the courage and deeds of those who gave their all to preserve all that we hold dear. When the museum's airplanes are not flying, they are displayed in 3 hangars: the trainer hangar, the fighter hangar, and the bomber hangar.
World War II was a worldwide conflict, and unfortunately it's not being taught in our schools anymore. But history always has a tendency to repeat itself, so we got to educate the younger generations about World War II. So learn these experiences from the past so you can apply them in the future to help guide this country in the right direction.
I know the buildings are built to last 250 years. The stories that are contained within these buildings will last just as long. We're connecting some of the battles. The only thing we can connect them with are the ground machines, which many people have a connection to rather than the aircraft.
With the museum opening, I started looking into the military vehicles. Started with the Deuce and a Half. The ambulance, when I had that repainted, we made sure that it matched the 4th Medical Battalion. And the 4th Medical Battalion actually were the first ambulances to arrive on D-Day. The ground vehicles all operate fully functional, and we could start them all up and take off and drive them right now.
The Fagan Fighters World War II Museum doesn't just tell the story of what happened. It is dedicated to preserving the stories of those who lived it, telling us how it happened. Veterans and others are invited to the museum to share their stories firsthand. Their stories are recorded and preserved through the museum's Voices of Valor program.
Let's do our museum around my father, Ray Fagan, and his World War II experiences. The first campaign medal he got was Normandy invasion. Second campaign medal he got was Liberation of Paris. And the third campaign medal he got was the Battle of the Bulge. He said you can't imagine how terrible it was.
We decided to make our collection a real museum when people referred to it as such. We opened the museum doors directly after our air show in 2012, so the date was June 17th, 2012.
The Fagan Fighters World War II Museum puts its collection in context for visitors by using original murals, sculptures, paintings, photographic collections, and other fine art to tell the story of epic events such as D-Day, June 6, 1944. This rail car, which anchors the museum's Holocaust exhibit, was found after years of searching in Germany and brought here so that no generation will ever forget the horror of the Holocaust or the memories of those who were lost.
When the Germans marched in, I was 7 years old. When I was liberated in January 18, 1945, I was 8 years old. And these are some of the things I remember.
The best single teacher we have about the lessons of the Holocaust are survivors. And for years, they've been the most important teachers. Sadly, as historian Deborah Lipstadt would say, the tyranny of biology means we have fewer and fewer survivors to speak. Memorials, and that's almost too static a term, opportunities to learn, like this exhibit, which opens people's eyes to the horrors of the Holocaust, are becoming ever more important in the absence of survivors. So what the Fagans have done here with their exhibit is to create a wonderful, remarkable learning opportunity for people of southwestern Minnesota, entire state, upper Midwest, and I know people coming from all over the world in learning about the Holocaust through this specific lens. So we thank the Fagans for their generosity of spirit, their vision, and their commitment to Holocaust education as they teach about the Second World War.
We're very happy to call the JCRC friends. They have visited the museum a number of times. Were very helpful in our Holocaust exhibit when we were building that at Split Rock Studios. And we are thrilled to be the recipient of their yearly award.
Someday, sooner than we'd like, the headline will read, "Last World War II Veteran Dies." When that day comes, how will we connect the greatest generation with the latest generation? Restoring these things to their original power and function, and capturing the stories of those members of the greatest generation who are still with us, offers not only a portal to the past, but an immortal connection to America's future generations.